I think we're live. So I just briefly touched on this during a live stream of mine about talking about consoles, especially with the release of the upcoming PlayStation 5 Pro and then the next wave of Xbox Series consoles. And I was talking about what my favorite gaming console was, and I hinted at that maybe I was going to wait to talk about that until next Tuesday, but really I was kind of itchy to talk about it now. So I made a list, and um, I like all these consoles. There's a couple of disappointments, and we'll get to that. But I'm going to go from least favorite to favorite, and I would love to hear from other people what they think, what their favorite is, and I acknowledge that a lot of this has to do with some nostalgia too. Um, so after writing these down, I've discovered that I've owned 15 different consoles in my lifetime. So coming at 15 is the PlayStation 4, and the reason that it's number 15 is I had it for maybe about 6 months, and then it was destroyed by a thunderstorm. But I think the most disappointing thing about the PS4 was that it wasn't backward compatible with the three previous generations. I think that was a huge reason why I remained with Xbox at that time. But I got a PlayStation 4 very briefly because I found one on Marketplace for like $100, and yeah, I just decided to dive into because there was some exclusives I wanted to play. Until Dawn was the big one, um, but yeah, I wasn't that impressed with the PS4. Speaking of disappointment, number 14 is the Xbox One. The biggest thing, so I think first impressions are very important. For me, the Xbox One, when it was launched, Microsoft said that they weren't going to allow their players to uh, trade games. So if you bought a game on disc, that disc would forever be tied to that particular Xbox One console unless you deleted the file. Like if I took my Xbox One disc to a friend's house, that console would know that the game was downloaded to another Xbox One console. So eventually they ended up changing that, but the fact they were thinking about doing that is kind of poopy. And then the Xbox One era just had zero good exclusives that I can think of. The biggest plus about the Xbox One, though, and the reason I got it was because I had a ton of OG Xbox and Xbox 360 games that with that could now benefit from better load times and all that sort of stuff. And then, of course, the apps and everything that were great too. And the Kinect was okay. I wouldn't say I loved it. Um, at number 13, I would put the Xbox Series S. That's the all digital only console from this generation of Xboxes. Now, while this console isn't necessarily for me, I did buy it because it's the only one I could get a hold of at the time because I really wanted one. And I think it's a great budget option if you're a parent or a grandparent and you have a kid that is an Xbox player or just a gamer, and you're like, okay, I can get him or her this console for 300, sometimes even less dollars, and then I can just get them the Game Pass, and you end up saving a ton of money because Game Pass is well worth. Like there's hundreds of games to choose from, so I think that's where the Series S is like actually really good. Well, while it's not for me personally, like I mean, it was cool to have until I was able to trade it in and get an Xbox Series X. But I think in my opinion, it's still best for people that are digital only, or that it's basically a Game Pass machine. Like I think if you're buying games, it's going to fill up really quickly. Um, and when I got mine, it came with the Master Chief Collection. Number 12 is the Nintendo DS. That was a system I bought off Marketplace again for like $40, and it was cool for a while. But the thing was, it kind of the screen was too small. I think the Nintendo Switch had, especially the OLED edition, had really spoiled me, and I think the DS, while cool, I think was kind of past its prime, and I think maybe if I'd gotten it when I was younger, it would have been higher on the list. Number 11 for me is my Atari 7800. Still regret getting rid of that thing, but the problem with that is it's it's a cool machine, and the fact that you could take and it was back compatible with the 2600 games, most of them anyway, and you took well, it was a difficult console to play because you had to have an adapter, and then sometimes it wouldn't read the cartridges even if you blew on them, and uh, also most Atari games, like especially the best ones, you can find in a collection like a 50 or even 100 collection. Like I have one for my Switch, and it's amazing that all those games are on a cartridge that's about this big when a single game used to be on one that's the size of my phone. So that's another reason that I couldn't just justify holding on to it, but I ended up selling it. But it was a cool machine nonetheless, cool piece of history. At number 10 is my PlayStation 2. I got a PS2 maybe about 5 or 6 months ago, I think. I never got a PS2 during the original run. I understand that the PS2 was kind of during the PlayStation's glory days. You could argue that the PS3 and 1 would also be close competitors for that. Um, I always thought the PS2 was cool, but I never had one until I bought a used one for about $80, and it is I really like the Slim. The Slim does a lot for how big for how small it is, and I'm enjoying Dirge of Cerberus, and there's some other games I intend on getting that were never on Xbox that I'm excited to play. Number 9 would be the original Xbox. Basically, for me and my brother, that was a Halo 1 and 2 machine. We did have other games, but we spent most of our time playing Halo 1 and 2. Like that was what that console was for. We played hundreds of hours of the original 2 Halo games, and I also had Doom 3 and Marvel's Ultimate Alliance. But that's really the only 4 games I can really remember playing on the original Xbox, and then taking it over to my friends to play on CRT TVs in their basement and play giant Halo matches. Like that was a lot of fun. Number 8 is the Wii. The Wii was a fun console, very simple. I think that the motion controls were very clever, and I never really had any problems. I always used the wrist strap, so I never worried about it flying at my TV. And it was a console even my grandparents liked, and so it's like not only would I play it at home, but I would also go and play it over there, and they really enjoyed the golfing games. Like it's like my grandparents were never interested in video games, but they really liked the Wii. And speaking of the Wii U is my 7th favorite. The Wii U, I got when I was living with my brother. I played more on that thing than I did my Xbox One. I played a ton of games, and I had a ton of digital games. And it's a bummer that the stores closed down. I can no longer access my account because I did try to do that through my girlfriend's mom's Wii U, and it wouldn't work anymore, which was really sad. There's a couple of games I'd still like to play. I'd love to play the Xenoblade game on the Wii U, and there's a couple of Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles games, but right now that's not in the cards. Maybe once I make it through, the entire catalog of PlayStation 2 games I want to buy, or I want to play, and also buy, hiccups. Maybe I'll trade that in for a Wii U at some point, or I find one super cheap, like at a garage sale. Maybe then I'll get one. But it'd be great to have more Wii U titles be ported over to the Switch. My 6th is my PlayStation 5. So the PlayStation 5, again, I kind of compared to it. It's like the Donatos of consoles right now. Like it's pristine. You have a controller that does all this cool and slick stuff, and then it's got like a sleek, futuristic design, whereas the Series X is more low key. But the PS5, compared to the others, I think it's the ugliest too. Like I don't like the way it looks. I just don't. I think it's kind of pretentious. And I basically bought that so I could play Final Fantasy 16, and the remakes of 7 were secondary. There's been a couple of other games I've been interested in, but 16 was like the console seller for me. Like if 16 had also come out on the Series X, I wouldn't have bothered getting a PS5. I wouldn't have cared enough. So Square Enix, take that how you will. Um, so the fifth would be the PlayStation 3. The PlayStation 3 was one that I missed also. And the reason that it ranks higher than the PS5 is that there is so many PlayStation 1 games you can get digitally. Now, usually I'm not somebody that goes for digital copies. However, most PlayStation 1 games, especially some of the classics or the cult classics, are super hard to find for a good price. And you got to worry about disc scratches too. So even though I got a disc cleaner, it's something I worry about. So for example, Xenogears is one that I bought for $10 on the PlayStation 3 store, and the cheapest copy I could find without the disc case was like 80. So it's like when you do the math, and you're poor, it's a no-brainer. So there's the PlayStation 3 with the store alone makes it worthwhile. I'm glad that Sony has kept that up. So I think take advantage of that while you can. Who knows how long they'll keep that up for? It'd be great if they did it forever, but they'll keep it up until I guess they're not making money off it anymore. But I really like that I can play older games digitally on the PlayStation 3, and there is some good PlayStation 3 titles that I've played that I wouldn't say I really liked. Like Silent Hill Homecoming was terrible, but I'll be playing a couple of games off that PlayStation 3, and my girlfriend / fiance was nice enough to give that PlayStation 3 for me for free because she had it in the closet, and she was like, it doesn't work anymore. Like it doesn't take discs. And just to tell a funny story, I had that thing for a couple months before I decided to take it apart, and I was just like, it sounds like the disk drive like it wants to work. And I was wondering if something was stuck or if there's something that I could replace real easily. So I took it apart. Lo and behold, there were four DVDs stuck in there. Her oldest, when he was a kid, had stuck four DVDs. That's our best guess. I mean, I'm certain that she did not do it. So I ended up fixing it, and now the disk drive works great. Like I'm amazed that the disk drive still works. The PlayStation 3 it's a behemoth of a console. So I think the PlayStation 3 is it's a well worth console getting, especially if there's some PlayStation 1 games that you missed out on, like me, because during the PS1 era, I was obviously a kid, so there were some teenage and rated M games that I couldn't play, and that's okay because my parents were just doing the best they could. My fourth favorite would be the Xbox Series X. And I should preface that by saying that I am kind of an Xbox fanboy. And the reason that the Series X it ranks so high is because it's backwards compatible with every generation of console. Now it doesn't do every game, but it still does a lot more. Like there's zero amount of PS1, 2, or 3 games that you can stick into the PS5 and it'll read. Like it won't read any of them. Whereas the Xbox Series X, there is a number of games from the first Xbox, the 360, and the Xbox, and all the Xbox One games that it'll read and download. Like it'll take the digital version off of like the store or whatever. And I think that's really great. Like from somebody that's had an Xbox since the original, the fact that I can have games from my collection and use it there is really cool. And that also makes it a lucrative console because I can buy used games. You just got to make sure you check an online list to make sure that game is backwards compatible. But that's what I really like about the Series X is that it allows for that. And then getting back to comparing it to like the dominoes of gaming. So with Xbox, affordability is key. Like you can get a cheap Xbox controller for like $20 or $30, and then there's different tiers of one. Whereas like the lowest costing PS5 controller is gonna be the DualSense, which is about 70 or $75, and you could probably get it cheaper used. But there's no budget option. Like there's no off brands that they allow to be used with their console, and I think that that's a shame. I really don't like that. And yeah, I don't like that one bit. But the thing is, with the Xbox Series X, it's just like there's corded controllers. Like they don't, and then my Xbox controllers, I've never had any issues with them. From the very first Xbox with the Duke, all through the 360, the One, and then the Series X. The only time I had a problem was with the 360 one. It's because it got ran over by a car, the controller, because it fell. I was moving and it fell out of a bag, and a car accidentally ran over it. That's the only time I've ever had a problem with a controller from Xbox. And it's like the controller I mainly play with on my Series X right now is one that it's corded, and it vibrates and everything like the old PS1 controllers do, like all the other Xbox ones have done. But it's like I don't feel like I really need the DualSense where you can feel the rain and everything. Maybe some other people really like that. Comment below. And I think that's where the two companies can really compete. If you're somebody that's really into that sort of thing, I'm not going to begrudge you with that. That's cool. Like if that's how you want to experience gaming, that's great. And then for some people who don't really care about that sort of thing, and they just want to play, there are people, using the pizza analogy, who are perfectly happy with a cheese pizza, but there's somebody that's like, I want all the toppings. I want an extravaganza, and they're willing to pay that extra more. And I think that's where the companies continue to compete, and I hope that it stays that way. Like I hope that Xbox doesn't drop out of the console wars during the next generation. I'm hoping that I think that they're doing better this time around. I think that the Series X is a huge step above the Xbox One. I really do. So my third favorite console is the PlayStation 1. That was my first console like ever that I had as a kid. I played Spyro the Dragon and the Crash Bandicoot games and all sorts of different ones. And I had a shelf. My brother and sisters and I had a shelf full of games. And I think the PS1 was also really responsible for teaching me how to be responsible. And it's the reason that I take such good care of my stuff, because my dad was like, if you scratch these discs, that's it. You got to take good care of these discs, otherwise you're not going to be able to play anymore. And I was always careful with my discs. And to this day, I'm still the same. Not to sound old, but kids these days, they don't understand with their tablets and everything. Whereas like if I scratched up my Spyro the Dragon disc, that was it. As like my parents weren't going to buy me a new one until maybe Christmas time, and it would stink to waste a gift from Santa Claus like that. My second would be the Xbox 360. Now, these top three, I think, are pretty much interchangeable for me. The reason that the Xbox 360 is my number two is because, well, it did have a lot of really good exclusives and crossovers, and I loved that most original Xbox games could be played on the 360, which is great because I had some games from the original Xbox that I really liked. And I had a pretty big collection of the 360 games, some that I still own. And I think the biggest thing for me was playing that console with my brother all the time, like again with the original Xbox, we played through the first three Halos, Halo Reach, and then we got into Gears of War, and there's more Ultimate Alliance with the 360 version, and then Skyrim was probably another big game that I put hundreds of hours into, and then Elder Scrolls Oblivion was also a really good one. And I think that he would say the same. Let's see, what other game did I play on Xbox 360 all the time? I think Skyrim was the Fallout games were also ones that I really liked, because once we got the 360 we were a bit older. The problem was we did get a first round Xbox 360, and we did get the 4 Rings of Death. However, it still worked for a little bit after that. Like, we let it sit for a little while, unplugged it, and vacuumed it out, and then it ran. And then we ended up getting another one. I don't remember what we did with that original one, if we kept it, because I know at one point we had 2. But surpassing the 360 is the Nintendo Switch. I bought my Nintendo Switch back in 2019. I've since upgraded to the OLED, but I consider them pretty much one console, because I still played in handheld quite a bit with the original. But if I had to put the OLED, I would put the OLED at number 0, I guess. So the Switch is my all-time favorite. Like, I really, really love that console. And I think the thing for me is that I love that you can play on the TV, and I love that you can play in handheld mode. So you can play on the car. There doesn't need to be, for most games, you don't have to have internet to play them. Of course, if it's an online game, that's different. But the Nintendo Switch is really cool. I'm excited for the Switch 2. If it's not backwards compatible, I won't be touching it, because I have so many games on my Switch. If I can just transfer everything from my Switch to the Switch 2, I'll definitely be getting one. Now, they're saying with the Switch 2 that their solution for battling scalpers is to just make a crap ton of them. So we'll see how that works out. But yeah, I think the Switch, the Nintendo Switch, specifically the Switch OLED, is a console I really love. Like, I really love playing in handheld mode. I think I love playing a lot of older games on it too. I think the older games hold up really well. Like, it was strange. I bought a ton of Final Fantasy, like Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9, 10. Which other ones did I get? It might have been those 4. Were my first purchases once I got the Nintendo Switch. You would think it would be Breath of the Wild, but I was weird, because they just happened to be on sale, and I'm like, I'm just gonna get all these, because I've wanted to get into this series since I was a kid, because it's cool guy with a sword, but it was rated teen at the time, and my dad was like, I don't know. And that's okay, because I think I got into the Final Fantasy series at the perfect time in my life. I really do. But comment below, let me know what your favorite gaming consoles is. Again, I suspect a lot of people are probably going to disagree with some of my picks, but that's okay. Just to reiterate, from least favorite to favorite: PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Xbox Series S, the Nintendo DS, Atari 7800, PlayStation 2, original Xbox, Wii, Wii U, PlayStation 5, PlayStation 3, PlayStation 1, Xbox 360, and Nintendo Switch. And last thing I'll say, I hate that I have to say original Xbox and not Xbox One, because there's the Xbox One, and then there's the Xbox One, the original Xbox. Like, Xbox, why couldn't you just call it the Xbox 720? Look out below, let me know what your favorites are. Take care.